Welcome to Criminal Law Unfiltered.
Welcome to Criminal Law Unfiltered with Robert M. Helfend. Robert is the founder of Helfend Law Group and has spent more than 40 years defending clients in Los Angeles, across the country in serious state and federal cases. With thousands of cases behind him, he's known for aggressive strategic defense when the stakes are at their highest. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're discussing jury selection and why it matters so much in criminal trial. Robert, sir, welcome back.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too, my friend. Listen, this is something that's always been intriguing to me. I've seen it a million times in movies, TV shows, and things like that. But when you start to, can you explain why jury selection is such a critical part of criminal trials?
It's the heart of a criminal trial. There can't be anything, more important. Because it's like, basically, when you have a jury trial, you're picking 12 individuals from the community, okay? And everybody that comes into this courtroom is from all walks of life. Now, everybody's a good person. I'm not saying anything negative about somebody, but you're really looking for people that you or will be, let's put it this way, that could be susceptible to your way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why it's very crucial. I mean, if you're going to pick the first 12 people that come into a courtroom, you're probably going to have a problem. So it's very important. It's the most important thing, really, in a jury trial is jury selection. I put a lot of time into my questions to potential jurors. And there's a couple things that I'm looking for, or things that I do in jury selection, which I'll get into in your next question.
Yeah. So what kind of questions? So for someone who's never been in court, could you kind of explain that basic process of how they're selected, though, Rob?
Well, what happens is when you start a jury trial, and depending on the type of a jury trial, but normally the jury trials that I do involve potential life sentences. So you get a lot. So what happens is they call the court staff call in, 80 people, maybe 120 people, and they all crowd into the courtroom. And the judge will talk to them and tell them, hey, you're here for jury service. You're lucky you're here. It's a honor. It's part of the privilege of being a U.S. citizen, blah, blah, blah. Then what happens is eventually 12 people, well, what normally happens is that 18 people are called randomly from a list. In LA County, you know who's coming because you have the list, so you could see the names of the people that are coming and the order they're going to be in. And they call them in, they put them in the jury box. So there's 12 people in a jury box. And then there's another row of 6 that are also called. So you have these 18 people. And then what happens is the judge asks them a bunch of questions like, not your name. You're not supposed to in LA County give your name.
Mm-hmm.
But they want you, where do you live? What area of the county do you live? Where do you work? What do you do? What does your spouse do? What is your spouse's work? Do you have any kids? What do they do? Do you have any prior jury trial experience? Do you have any negative experience with law enforcement? Have you ever been a victim of a crime? And those are the types of questions that the judge will ask these people. And so you're taking notes, and eventually, like my last trial, the judge thought, hey, I do this pretty thoroughly. My questions are so thorough, you probably don't need to ask any more questions. Like, no, Judge, we need to ask more questions.
Yeah.
And so then what happens is then he turns it over to the lawyers to ask your questions. And that's how it works. And your next question, I can talk to you about the things that I do in my questions.
Yeah, let me know. Yeah, so what do you do? What's Robert looking for? You know what I mean? You're this is you said this could be potentially for someone's life. So what are you looking for, and what are you looking for in those people?
I just wanted to break it up there so I'm not talking for, 30 minutes straight. So here's so when I am asking questions to a jury, there's two things I'm trying to do. Number one thing is to eliminate people. For instance, many times I've had cases where I have a client that killed somebody with a gun by because it was self-defense.
Hmm.
And so I have to ask like a jurors, under what circumstances do you believe that deadly force would be justified?
Mm.
And they'll tell you things. And so, I've had with that question, I've had people say, never, never, it's never justified. You should always talk it out. Okay. Gone, wrong answer, you're out of here. So you don't say that, that's not how it works. We could get into that later, but but you're really thanking that person for being honest. I'm glad you told me that because you're a good person, but you're just not the right person for this case.
Hmm.
And so, but there's another key question after that, which is supposing you as a juror decided that deadly force was justified in a situation. A follow-up question is, what if you were told that the person that used the deadly force was prohibited from using the instrument that they inflicted the deadly force with? For
Mm.
instance, be it a knife or maybe a gun. Would that affect your ability to judge or determine whether the deadly force was justified?
Mm.
That's a key question because you can't be completely specific about what the case is about when you're asking jurors questions. And so that question is designed, let's just say, your client shot somebody and your client has a prior conviction. Okay, which means that they can't possess a gun. So that those two questions that I just asked with the follow-up about being prohibited, I'm trying to find people that listen, I don't care that your client can't own a gun. I can get past that and I can determine whether or not the deadly force was justified. And so you have to be able to craft questions to potential jurors that will weed out people who will say they shouldn't have a gun, or people who will say, or that deadly force is never justified. They should talk it out. And you also need to weed out people that should say, well, what is he doing or what is she doing with a gun in the first place? Because that's the knee jerk reaction with most of these cases that I have. Because when I talk to people before a jury trial, a lot of times I will talk to friends. They'll ask me about what's the case you got. Well, I have
Yeah.
something that goes like this. And the knee jerk reaction is constantly, what are they doing with a gun? And I look at them and go, glad you asked. You're not on my jury.
Right.
And you have to find people that aren't going to just close their mind to being fair because you have a client that used a gun and they shouldn't have had one.
Mm.
So that's when you say, what is jury selection all about? Tell us about it. It's one of the most important aspects of a jury trial is you gotta expend the energy on getting the right people. Because, I mean, no matter what, if you get people that aren't open, that are closed-minded, I mean, that don't get out, that, like you say, they just watch things on TV.
Hmm.
Oh, no, they shouldn't have a gun ever. your client's going to get convicted.
Right. So Rob, what about the misconceptions that people have about how juries are picked? You know what I mean? About maybe people thinking that you can prosecute or defense can stack the deck, or they're looking for a certain thing. What are those misconceptions out there that people might not understand about this process?
First of all, there's one other thing that I look for, or when I'm asking these questions about potential jurors, there's one other thing that I'm doing, and I'm letting jurors know subconsciously what this case is going to be about. So when I say to you, what would it change your opinion of whether somebody who's utilizing deadly force was prohibited from using this instrument? People get the clue. Wait, I bet you this case is about self-defense, and his client can't have this gun or this knife or something because they probably have a prior conviction.
Mm.
So I'm letting them know about a lot of different aspects of the case in jury selection. Okay, that's not only am I trying to weed out people that can't be open to my arguments in the end, it's all consistent. So you started in jury selection, the evidence is coming out the way, okay, I already know what people are going to say. There's very few times where I don't know what a witness is going to say. So I know what they're going to say. I know what the theme is. And so in closing argument, I'm very consistent now with what I already told you from the beginning. So I'm not, I told you in the beginning, this is, and so those are the two reasons why I have these questions and why jury selection is important. I spend a lot of time trying to figure out the appropriate questions to ask potential jurors. Now, the judge, it depends on your judge too, because some various judges that I've had are not on the law as much. And like my last trial, this judge was very he was on the law of jury selection and what I could say and how I could phrase it. And so, some judges can try and stop me because they believe that my questions aren't designed to eliminate a juror for cause, meaning for cause they're too prejudicial for this case. Like my last trial was very challenging because he was on it and he would stop me a lot. The DA didn't stop me, but he did. So, you have to be on your game sometimes. And when you have a judge like that.
So how do you?
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, we good. We got it. But Robert, how do you balance that gut instinct though, especially with all your experience as a lawyer, with what's on paper when you're deciding to whether keep or strike a juror, you know what I mean? Because it might go one way, but based on your experience, like I said, how do you balance the gut with the practical things?
Let me go back because your last question was, how do you prevent the prosecution or me stacking the deck? I didn't answer that. It's very difficult to stack the deck. The prosecutor, they know what they're looking for and they can see what I'm looking for. And I am looking for a typical person. And there are certain people in the community that are no-nos for me. And I will not say that on a podcast because of what are no-nos. And, you're not allowed to get rid of people just on a no-no. It has to be backed up by something that they say.
Okay.
So you can't base it on look or nationality or anything like that. But I know a lot of defense attorneys, we talk, and there are certain people that you can see and you go, and that's not going to work. Nah, it's not going to work here. So It's hard. It's hard for the prosecutor to stack a deck as much as it is for me to stack a deck. If I get a judge that allows me leeway, then I can get a really good jury. But if I have a judge that's on it, meaning the law in California, it's a little more difficult because the law basically is difficult to work with as when to try to get the people that you want. And it's a difficult process. There's no doubt about it. Even though I say that it's the most important thing in a jury trial, it's hard. I had one federal trial in my career, and it was the very first jury trial this federal judge had ever done. She had come over, he or she had come over from state court. In fact, it was a building right up the street from the federal courthouse. And I had her very first trial, and she said, "Counsel, we're going to use the Arizona method." Oh, really? I don't know what that is. So federal court jury trials, talking about a challenge, the difference between federal court and why it's much more difficult for a defense, for the defense in a federal trial is because the judges ask all the questions. The judges do. The judges do the follow-up questions. You don't. So you
Wow.
never get a rapport with the jurors, and the judges don't allow me to talk to them, and they don't ask all the questions that I want them to. So this judge used the Arizona method. Not only did this judge ask the questions, right, and do the follow-up questions, even though I wanted more, but then when it got time to pick the actual jurors, she sent all of them outside the courtroom, and you had to select from just your sheet and your memory of who that person is.
Wow.
Okay, right? And so I'm sorry, but somebody, the way they look, there's something without seeing them, it takes a certain aspect of your perception of somebody, of whether or not they're wearing a white sweater that's buttoned up all the way, or whether or not they're in a tie-dye t-shirt.
Yeah.
I can't see that now. So that I've never seen that before in that trial, and that's the way this court did it, which was it was challenging, let's put it that way.
Robert, does the pool of available jurors in Los Angeles compare to smaller counties that you practice in? What's the difference between LA County and other places?
Well, LA County is pretty unique because LA County has, I've tried cases in all the different counties around here. I wouldn't say that they're small counties. I do have a case that's pending for trial in a small town. So we could revisit this next summer after I do this. But every different jurisdiction, I call it, every little town in LA County, the makeup of the jurors is completely different. I mean, if you, like, for instance, there's a town up north here, it's called the Antelope Valley, and that's the Lancaster court.
Yep.
It's I had never gotten a guilty verdict in Lancaster. And one of the reasons is because, and I've had a few trials there, it's one of the only places where I might just take the first 12 because a lot of the people, when you talk to them, when the judge, questions them, like I would say 7 to 8 out of 12 have a relative in prison. So that's going to give them this perspective of the process of the judicial system. it's going to give them a unique perspective. So, I mean, if you have a relative in prison, I'm already liking you for my jury because you probably don't like the system because of what they did to your relative.
Right.
Yeah. So, but every there are certain jurisdictions are a little more difficult than other ones, and so you got to talk to them longer. Every courthouse has a different makeup of potential jurors.
So Robert, to close this out, my brother, what challenges come up when a case has had a lot of media coverage before trial? How do you handle that?
Well, first of all, my cases that I've had that had media coverage, normally after the first few days or weeks, it's gone. But if you did have a case that had a lot of media coverage, it's easy to cover that because it's just with a question. How many of you have heard about this case before you came in here? And,
Yep.
and then you follow up that question. So it's easy to kind of weed people out who already have a preconceived notion of what they think they're going to hear.
All right, guys. Thank you for listening to Criminal Law Unfiltered with Robert M. Helfend. Jury selection is where a trial really begins, and understanding the process is critical. If you are a loved one or facing a serious charge in California, visit robertmhelfand.com to schedule a free consultation. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review to the channel so you do not miss part 2 of this. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.